Hello, and welcome back to yet another NFL video. Today, man, we're actually going to be starting a series on the channel talking about like NFL team previews. Now, listen, I for damn sure am not going to get through all 32 NFL teams, and I don't want to get through all 30. There's about 10, 12 teams that I could care less about. With that being said, I'm going to try and get through just about every team that I think is relevant, has a chance to win the Super Bowl, make a deep playoff run, stuff like that, right? So I'm actually going to start the series off with the Philadelphia Eagles, and you'll see why as I continue to talk about them. I'm gonna start with them. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. How y'all doing today, man? I'm doing splendid today, and let's hop right into this shit, bro. But firstly, thank y'all for watching. All right. So let's talk about the past before we get to the current version of the Eagles. So obviously, we all know 2022 amazing season. They were the best team in the NFL in my opinion. Amazing regular season. They started off like what 14-1. Um, Amazing playoff run, beat like what was it, the Giants, the Niners, and made it all the way to the Super Bowl. Played the Chiefs. Amazing game, wonderful game. Came down to the wire. But of course they ended up losing to the Chiefs. And then last season they took a step backwards for a lot of reasons, notably because they lost their offensive and defensive coordinator. We're going to talk about that later on as well. But both of their amazing coordinators got poached for head coaching jobs, and they messed up on both hires. I mean, like that is a guaranteed recipe for disaster in any level, college or NFL. If you lose both coordinators, you're setting yourself up for a very tumultuous following season. But when you whiff on both of them, it is truly amazing that the Eagles ended up winning 11 games last season, just based off that fact. And not only that, they started off the season incredibly well. They really fumbled at the end of the season. Really, they started off. I mean, from 2022 and the first half of 2023, the Eagles looked like one of, if not the best teams in football. But obviously, as we all know, they did crumble in the second half of last season. No, it'll be like the last 6, 7 weeks. And even though they did make the playoffs, they lost in the first round, the wild card, to the Buccaneers, and a bit of an upset. But by that point, everybody kind of knew the Eagles were frauds, so it wasn't really that much of a surprise when the Buccaneers won. But they blew the Eagles out. It was a terrible game. Um, but yeah, man, the Eagles after that fired both coordinators, made a lot of moves this off. Like they were aggressive this offseason, which I like. I'll talk about a couple moves that they made. But yeah, man, let's kind of get into what the Eagles look like currently. So, well, before we do that, let's take a look at their stats last season, what they were good at, not so good at. Um, they were still a good offense, right? Nobody's questioning that. Obviously with Jalen Hurts, uh, DeAndre Swift, they were able to run the ball incredibly well. And with guys like AJ Brown, Devonta Smith on the outside, they were a well balanced offense. But any Eagles fan will tell you they were just terrible. Like, even though the stats say that they were pretty good, like they're top 10 in several categories here, top 11, but they turned the ball over way too much, which can be attributed to Jalen Hurts, but I don't put all the blame on him. I think the offensive coordinator they had last year, Brian Johnson, was pretty terrible. And this is the problem with the talent on the team. You look at some of these positions, okay, you say it's not that bad, but the turnovers absolutely killed them, and they should have been better. I feel like still as an offense, they were not operating at their full potential. Jalen Hurts took a step back, whether it was due to injury or poor coaching or just poor play overall. He was not as good as he was in 2022. And then this is the crazy thing to me defensively. The Eagles were arguably the best defense in football in 2022. They led the entire league in sacks by a lot. They had like over 60 sacks. They had a cornerback duo of both all pro caliber players. I mean, they were absolutely amazing defensively. And last year, they were bottom six in how many? One, two, three, four categories. The Eagles were a terrible defense. That is mind blowing to me how you can take that big of a step back in 1 year when you don't even lose that much personnel. So that just kind of proves the point that coaching was a massive issue last year for the Eagles. It really showed defensively, and that is definitely the area where I expect just massive leaps and bounds of improvement for the Eagles next season. Let's take a look here at their roster. So, a lot of similar faces on the off. I mean, let's break it down a little bit here. I'm going to go more in depth on each position group and everything. I'll actually start off with the coaches. So, like I mentioned earlier, fired both their coordinators after a disastrous season. So, Nick Sirianni, he went out. Offensive coordinator, they brought in Kellen Moore. Now, Kellen Moore, I don't know how to feel about him. You know, he's an experienced guy, right? Because last year, I think was his only year in with the Chargers, if I'm not mistaken, which was I don't know how to judge that season. There were a lot of injuries. Um, and Justin Herbert got hurt. So it's like, I don't know how to really judge that in totality for him. So I kind of consider that a wash. But with the Cowboys, they consistently had good offenses with Kellen Moore as the coordinator. He was viewed as a very good coordinator with the Cowboys. How will that translate to the Eagles? Well, he has a lot of talent, he has a lot of pieces to work with. And I feel like if Kellen Moore is worth a damn, if 10% of the hype from Dallas is true, he will be a much better coordinator than what the Eagles had last season, and they will, as you know, as a result, be a better offense than they were last season. A couple things to look out for. Jalen Hurts has to be better. He had really the if you think about it, really last season was his worst season of his career because in 2021 they made the playoffs surprisingly. He was a young player, not a lot of expectations, and he shocked a lot of people. 2022, obviously, he was the best player in football. In my opinion, he should have won MVP, and he did outplay Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl. So he was arguably the best player in football in 2022. So when that is the case, the only way to go is down. But still, I feel like he had way too many turnovers, not as much improvement as a thrower of the football as you'd like to see. So hopefully he does bounce back this season, and he should possibly even put together his best year just based off the talent around him. They replaced DeAndre Swift with Saquon Barkley, their third running back in 3 years, but it's the best. I mean, Saquon is a massive, massive move. They paid a lot of money to get him in town, and I mean, what can you say? Saquon, when healthy, is one of the best backs in football. He's now playing behind a great offensive line and a team that loves to run the football. I think this is going to be a very good pairing. Only question is, can he stay healthy? But you can apply that to anybody. Saquon, when he's out there, is an amazing player. He should help this team tremendously. Obviously, the tandem, AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, we both know what they can do. AJ Brown has kind of solidified himself as one of the best receivers in football, a great connection with Jalen Hurts. So I love the receiving core. Dallas Goedert as a tight end, extremely underrated, a very important piece to this offense. But I feel like the biggest, I don't know which one to call it, the biggest change for the Eagles offense, at least, is the loss of Jason Kelsey, Hall of Fame center, kind of the heart and soul of this team, if you will. The center, you know, the quarterback doesn't touch the ball every play. They got wildcat formations, that type of shit. The center touches the ball on every single play. And to replace that, that's going to be very difficult, but I'll kind of get into why I think the Eagles offensive line will still be fine moving forward. And now defensively. So I don't even know who the defensive coordinator was last. I think it was it was it that guy, the old Patriots guy who was terrible as a Lions head coach, Matt Patricia. I think it was that guy was the defensive coordinator. They got him out of there. And they brought in Vic Fangio. Now, if you're a hardcore NFL fan, or even if you're like a casual fan but know a little bit about the coaches, you know that Vic Fangio is like a premier defensive coordinator in all of football. Like wherever he goes. So I think he used to be with the Bears when they were a great defense. I think he used to be with the Niners when they were a great defense, still a great defense, but like back in the early 2010s. And he was the coach of the Broncos for a little bit, had a great defense. And he was actually with the Eagles. He was a consultant. He wasn't the coordinator, but he was a consultant to the Eagles in 2022 when they were so amazing defensively, which I love. He already has experience with a lot of these players. He's been in the building. He has connections already. He knows why they were so successful in 2022, so we can just implement that right away. Last year's with the Dolphins, comes back to the Eagles. I expect massive leaps and bounds of improvement on the defense now that you got Vic Fangio in town. But they did make a few personnel changes. They lost Hassan Reddick. I say lost. They basically traded Hassan Reddick for Bryce Huff. Now, I'm a big fan of Hassan Reddick. I think he was absolutely incredible for them. But I guess you could say it makes sense. Bryce Huff a lot younger, and you could maybe say now 2-3 years, down the line, the upside for Bryce Huff is larger than that for Hassan Reddick, and I understand that. I think it was actually a win-win for both teams if you break it down. Um, some of the veterans on this defensive line, Fletcher Cox no longer there. Brandon Graham has gotten pretty old, so it's going to be a lot of new guys. Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis have to be massive for this team. Um, you would like to see some improvement from Nolan Smith off the edge. You definitely need to see him step up. Josh Sweat, I think, is still the established veteran pass rusher, and I think he should be the best pass rusher on this team along with Bryce Huff next season. So I love the D line, honestly. I think They're going to be able to get after the quarterback very well. The linebacking core, a lot of new faces in there. They haven't really had a solidified guy for a while. Devin White should be that guy. A lot of people are down on Devin White and kind of clowning him, but honestly, I feel like this is an amazing pickup for the Eagles. It's basically a 1 year rental, but still, man, if Devin White still has any bit of fire left in him, I think he is absolutely going to look amazing with the Eagles next season. And I love the pickup. And it says Zach Bond is going to be the starter there. I think Nakobe Dean will win the job alongside Devin White. And yeah, he'll be like the fourth or fifth or sixth Georgia starter on this Eagles defense. And moving to the secondary now, a few changes here as well. Multiple rookies, amazing rookie pickups. The Eagles arguably got the two best rookie DBs in the entire draft with like the 24th and 41st picks. So an amazing draft by them. But in terms of returning guys, we already know what Darius Slay is. Borderline Hall of Famer. I mean, an amazing, amazing corner, consistent year in and year out. He returns. Isaiah Rodgers actually he was there last season, but he was suspended. Remember, he comes from the Colts. He got suspended for a year for gambling, I think. He's a new addition. Mitchell, a new addition. DeJean, a new addition. CJ Gardner Johnson, he's back. He's one of the guys that was there in 2022, led the league in interceptions, only played like 12 games, led the league in picks, was a Pro Bowler, went to the Lions, got hurt as he always does, but he's back with the Eagles now. That's an amazing, underrated pickup. The third one that they've made on defense now between Devin White, Bryce Huff, CJ Gardner Johnson in free agency. That's an amazing move by the Eagles to get a guy who's been there already, was there when they were incredibly successful, and should be an upgrade at safety. And then just so many young options at corner. Keely Ringo, Eli Ricks, Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, one of the deepest cornerback rooms in all of football, and James Bradberry. We're going to get to James Bradberry. The man was absolutely terrible last season, but I like the fact that he's still on the roster. All right, moving on. By the way, I was hoping this video would be like under 20 minutes. I guarantee this show's going to be like longer than 35. I just end up yapping so much. All right. So taking a look at a few of their weapons offensively. And, the Eagles, start off like this. They don't really have a wide. Let's go back a second. They don't really have a wide receiver three. They got a lot of options. I mean, Paris Campbell, John Ross, Johnny Wilson, Joseph Nada, Nia Smith. They got several guys who could eventually step up and win that role. But honestly, I don't really think it matters. If you look at this top four right here, Devonta Smith, AJ Brown, Dallas Goedert, Saquon, they're going to get the majority of touches right in the pass game from Jalen Hurts. And Jalen Hurts is going to use his legs a lot. They really don't need a wide receiver three. They have a good tight end and a great running back now out of the backfield to catch the passes. So I think they're good. They don't really need 4 or 5 good receivers. But overall, man, if we're simply talking about wide receiver duo, tight end, running back, the Eagles might have the best in the league. We know what Saquon is. He was good last season behind a terrible offensive line, just a bad Giants offense. He still put up good numbers. Devonta Smith, never been a Pro Bowler, but I feel like he's kind of established himself. We know how good he is. And if he was the number one, I feel like his numbers would be even better. But he is a good compliment to AJ Brown, a great receiver in his own right. Dallas Goedert, again, a guy who's never been a Pro Bowler, consistently been injured, but one of the more underrated tight ends in all of football. He struggled with injuries, but when he's out there, man, he is a key player in this Eagles offense. And then, like I said earlier, AJ Brown solidified himself as like a multiple time All Pro now, one of the highest paid receivers, deservingly so. Great connection with Jalen Hurts. He is the true number one option of any player on this offense. And Jalen Hurts, like I said earlier, it wasn't a horrible year last year. Like 4,400 total yards, 38 touchdowns. For that to be a step in the wrong direction is a good sign, right? But cut down on the turnovers, be more effective as a thrower of the football, and just get back to what they were doing so well in 2022, right? Not putting the ball in harm's way as much. That's a very easy task. And then Kenneth Gainwell as the backup. The reason I include him here, he's been the consistent guy that they went from Miles Sanders, DeAndre Swift, Saquon. Gainwell's been here the whole time, and if Saquon, knock on wood, I got wood right here, if he was to get hurt, we could see a very big role potentially for Kenneth Gainwell, and he's been there for a while. I think he would do well in that role. So I love the Eagles offense. Point blank, I love their offense, love the quarterback, love the weapons, upgrade at running back. I don't think anybody can argue the fact that the Eagles have a great, talented core of offensive playmakers. Now let's get into the offensive line. So let's talk about what I love first. Jordan Mailata, Lane Johnson. Off the top of my head, I don't know if there is a better tandem of tackles in the NFL. Lane Johnson, potential Hall of Famer. Jordan Mailata, one of the best in the game right now at left tackle. They are both incredible, both amazing, both are, I mean, they're some of the best at their position, right? I think we all understand that. And to have a pair of tackles as talented as them, it just completes this offense, in my opinion. The interior of the offensive line, Landon Dickerson, amazing player, one of the highest rated, like for those grades down there, those are PFF ratings. It is so rare to find a guard be that highly rated. To, like a 70 plus overall rating is incredible. 77 pass rating, it's great. Landon Dickerson, amazing player. To replace Jason Kelce, it's not going to happen. You're not going to find a guy as talented. But Cam Jurgens has kind of been he's kind of been waiting in the wings, if you know what I mean. They've known Jason Kelce won't be there forever, and from what I've heard, they've kind of been preparing Cam Jurgens to step into that role. Now he played right guard primarily last season, so not as much experience as you'd like. But as far as I'm concerned, he is ready to take over. I don't think he'll be a liability. Obviously, won't be as good as Kelce, but I think he's ready to step in and be a good center for the Eagles. So I'm confident with that. Tyler Steen is the only one that kind of gives me some pause, but not really. Also, on top of that, I think, because him and Landon Dickerson both played at Alabama, I think they overlapped by years. So I think they were actually teammates at Alabama, both now playing it for the Eagles. I think that's cool. Um, Tyler Steen was a third round pick, 2023, sat out a year, which I like. He got to learn the system, did not play a lot last season, but now he's going to be able to step in at right guard. And as far as I'm concerned, they can absolutely afford him to be their worst offensive lineman. Like there is no pressure on Tyler Steen to be amazing, but I like the fact he was able to sit for a year, learn the system, get stronger, get more agile, whatever you need to do, and to step in and you just have to be not terrible. That's all you have to do if you're Tyler Steen. Be not terrible at the right guard position. That's not a lot to ask for. And to wrap up, I love the Eagles offense, and I think they should be one of the five, if not top five, top 10 best offenses in all of football. If they were top 10, like that would actually be pretty disappointing. I think they should be a top five offense in football next season, barring injury. Moving on to the defense here. Like I mentioned earlier, I do love this offensive line, highlighting a couple of their best players. I didn't even include Josh Sweat in here. Let me quickly Google Josh Sweat stats as well. So Jordan Davis is a guy who very highly rated a couple years ago coming out of college. First round pick by the Eagles, athletic just specimen. The man is massive, but didn't really first 2 years has not had a massive impact. He was definitely overshadowed last year by Jalen Carter. But I mean, look, he absolutely, if you're just, when the Eagles drafted Jordan Davis, they understood, right, that they were trying to get a run blocking monster up the middle, right? And that's what I feel like he's done up to this point. So I'm not mad at Jordan Davis, but you would like to see at some point a step, like a massive leap in production, right? Jalen Carter, on the other hand, came in immediately as a rookie and just dominated, right? Everybody saw it, everybody knows that. And yeah, he is really the star of this front seven as a whole for the Eagles. Bryce Huff, like I said earlier, basically a trade with the Jets for Hassan Reddick. Bryce Huff comes in 10 sacks, 10 tackles for a loss, 21 QB hits, pretty much on par, not exactly, a little bit behind Hassan Reddick's production. But this is the thing. Bryce Huff did all this in like only a couple hundred snaps. And what I mean by that is he was basically like a singular pass rusher. Like he was not on the field that often. Like for a premier pass rusher, he did not play that much. So the optimist would say, wait a minute, if you put him on the Eagles with a more talented defensive line around him and you play him more, you give him more opportunities, could this be a guy in the future that eclipses 15, 16, 17 sacks in a season? I think that's very possible. On top of that, you got a guy like Josh Sweat. He's been with the Eagles for like 6, 7 years now, and he's had 4 straight seasons of at least 6 sacks. Last season, had over 20 QB hits again, tied his career high with 23 QB hits. He's been a Pro Bowler in the past, and I expect him to have yet again a 6+ sack season and be a very good pass rusher for the Eagles. I already mentioned Devin White. I expect him to be their best linebacker and really, what's the word, reestablish himself as one of the best linebackers in the NFL. James Bradberry, look, James Bradberry was terrible last season. I'm not denying that. What I'm saying is look at his stats. These are his stats from 2022, right? I don't know what happened. This is why cornerback is the hardest position in all of football because he was literally, I'm not exaggerating, he was literally named an all pro in 2022, was absolutely incredible, and then was completely awful last season. I don't know why. But the point I'm making is there still has to be something left, right? From 2022. Vic Fangio returns. I'm banking all my hope on that. I like James Bradberry because he's extremely underrated, but he has to, it can't get worse, right? Knock on wood, right? Because that could blow up in my face, but it can't get worse if you're James Bradberry than it was last year. So I hope he can bounce back, but I do hope Kelee Ringo takes some of his snaps. Reed Blankenship kind of burst on the scene out of nowhere, undrafted, if I'm not mistaken, earned a starting position for the Eagles last year. It was pretty damn good. 3 picks, 11 pass breakups, over 100 tackles. He was a pretty good safety last year for the Eagles. So that was kind of a surprise for them. They bring him back. Darius Slay, I already mentioned earlier, consistent All Pro, Pro Bowl player. One of the more consistent cornerbacks of the last decade, really. Yeah, shout out to Darius Slay for just being, breaking the mold really as being a cornerback who's able to stay relevant and good over time. And then, like I said earlier, CJ Gardner Johnson, these were his stats from 2022. 6 interceptions, like 12 games, 8 pass breakups. I love their secondary. And I love their D line. The only real weakness is linebacker, and they got several guys who I think could play there and play well. So they even got guys like Jeremiah Trotter at the draft who I think could play in spots. So honestly, I love the Eagles defense. They were bad last year. I understand that. I'm not denying that. But I mentioned several reasons why I expect them to take a massive leap forward. I'm not going to say top 10, but they should be top 10. They, with the talent on the roster and the new coordinator, they should be a top 10 defense and a top 5 offense. That is why I think they're going to be as successful as I predict them to be. This is what they were last season, right? Obviously, like I said earlier, what is that? They were 10-1. 10-1 to start the season with a bad loss to the Jets, but they had a great defense. The Eagles were on top of the world. They had back-to-back wins over the Chiefs and the Bills, and they also beat the Cowboys. They were literally on top of the world. And then blown out on the road against the 49ers, blown out at home against the Cowboys. That shit hurt. They lost to my Seahawks. They lost to Drew Lock. They lost to Drew Lock. That's when I knew it was over for the Eagles. Beat the Giants, lost back-to-back games, guys, to the Cardinals and the Giants. That shit is pathetic. And of those 5 losses that they had at the end there, 3 of them were blowouts. Niners, Cowboys, Giants, all just embarrassing. And it resulted in a heartless, gutless performance against the Buccaneers, in which, yet again, they got blown out. Both coordinators deserve to be fired. There was even some heat on Nick Sirianni, the head coach. But listen, they still started off 10-1. They dominated their division. But they did have a lot of bad losses, man. The Cardinals, the Giants, my Seahawks without Geno Smith, those are bad losses, man. Really bad. And the Jets as well. So looking forward a little bit to what I think they're going to do next season, right? Because I'm going to do this. I'm going to, every team I do on here, I'm going to predict every single game, and I'm going to be consistent, meaning that if I pick a game for one team, that applies when I'm, predicting the next team. So I hope that makes sense. So what these predictions apply to the entire league, right? So what do the Eagles do next season? Well, week 1 against the Packers, I actually have them losing that game. I think it's going to be in like Brazil, right? So there's not going to be any home field for either team. So Eagles versus Packers week 1. I think there's a lot of new additions for the Eagles. There's, 2 new coordinators. I think it's going to take them a little bit to get rolling early. So I think they're actually going to lose a close game. Good Packers team, right? I think they're going to lose to the Packers narrowly in week 1. Then I think they're going to bounce back against some NFC South teams at home against the Falcons. That's pretty much a must-win game. Now, I'm not going to say must-win, but Falcons are a pretty good team. But you get them at home, you got to win a game. You can't start off 0-2. Close game, good team. I think they beat the Falcons in week 2. Week 3, they travel on the road to the Saints. They are significantly better than the Saints. I expect them to beat the Saints and start the season off 2-1. I actually had them losing their 4th game against, again, Buccaneers. Buccaneers already dominated them not even a year ago. Same environment, same, Buccaneers hosting this game. I think the Buccaneers beat the Eagles. I think they're not able to overcome those demons from last year. But then I think Off of that, again, win 2 games. Again, at home versus a very good team in the Browns, narrowly come out with that one. And at the Giants, I expect them to dominate the Giants. They are simply much better than the Giants, and I do not think they should be losing these type of games. So start the season off 4-2. Then I have them losing 2 out of their next 3 on the road against the Bengals. If Joe Burrow is healthy, that's a very, very tough game to win. I have them losing that one close. Defense getting kind of carved up in that one. Uh, at home against the Jaguars, at home, better team. I think they win that one. And then on the road against the Cowboys, again, it's a great rivalry. Eagles, Cowboys. I don't think either team is going to beat, the other twice in the season. So I think they're going to lose the first matchup against the Cowboys on the road. I think that makes more sense. So at this point, Eagles are 5-4. And going back to the second half of last season, I mean, this is not good. Like if you're an Eagles fan and you start the season off 5-4, that's not good at all. There might even be a lot of heat on Nick Sirianni, but this is where I kind of think the opposite of what happened last season is going to start to take place. For example, I think they win their next 2 games at home against the Commanders, blowout, on the road against the Rams. They won this game last season. Rams a good team, but I think they pulled that one out. Then on the road against the Ravens, extremely tough environment. Late season, it'll probably be cold. Ravens, such a great team. I think they narrowly lose that game. And I think it's the last game they lose. I think they finish the regular season on a 5-game streak against some pretty bad teams. Panthers, Commanders, Giants, not difficult at all. You can play 4 out of these 5 games at home. You get the Steelers at home, good team, close game. I think they win that one. And you get the Cowboys at home. Like I said earlier, I don't think you lose both the games to the Cowboys. I think the Eagles are the better team. You beat the Cowboys. I think with that, you clinch the division. You finish the season on a 5-game win streak, the complete opposite of what happened last season. And for that matter, you win 7 out of your last 8. So I think the Eagles finish the regular season 12-5, going into the playoffs. And here's the tough thing to predict. I don't know if they'd be the first seed in the NFC. I think the NFC is very wide open, if you will. They'd definitely be competing with teams like the Niners. I mean, I don't know. For the sake of the argument here, I'm going to say that the Eagles, well, let's see, actually. Let's see what I think. Oh, shit. I'm going to say that they clinch the first seed. And at 12-5, they skip the wild card, head straight to divisional, rematch with the Packers, played them week 1, lost. I think they flip the script, beat the Packers in the playoff. Now they're on fire, if you will. 5-game win streak to end the regular season, coming together, gelling late in the season. I think they beat the Packers, not nearly as experienced as the Eagles. I think the Eagles defense shows up big time, and they pull off a close win there. Then conference championship, I think they beat the Lions. Lions make it back-to-back years, in my opinion. Very, very good team, well coached, good quarterback, but just narrowly come up short. Yet again, narrowly come up short against the Eagles. Good game, great game, I think. 2 great offenses. But I think the Eagles win that game and punch their ticket back to the Super Bowl against, not the Chiefs, against the Texans. And I think they win that game. Young upstart Texans, all the hype, all the energy, solid across the board, great coaching, everything you want in a team. And this game could go either way. I could definitely see the Texans winning winning the whole thing. But I think the Eagles will beat the Texans as the more experienced team, the slightly more well-coached team. And I think they actually go on an 8-game win streak to end the season, including an undefeated, obviously, in the playoffs. And I think the Eagles win the Super Bowl. And I mean, yeah, the Eagles are my pick. I am picking the Eagles to win the Super Bowl. I think I picked them last year as well. I think last year I had Eagles Chiefs, Eagles winning as a rematch. And this season I'm going to have Eagles Texans and Eagles winning that matchup. So, yeah, man, literally the opposite. Last season the Eagles started off 10-1 and fell apart late. I think next season they're going to start off kind of rocky, but pull together, win 10 out of their last 11 games, and end up winning the whole thing. So don't get me wrong, it's a tough schedule. I mean, just let's look at the teams next season that they play that I expect to be playoff at least relevant. Packers, Falcons, Buccaneers, Browns, Bengals, Jaguars, Cowboys, Rams, Ravens, Steelers, Cowboys. That's 11 teams in the regular season that I expect to win at least 9 games. So that's a tough schedule if you're the Eagles. But with that being said, I think they're good enough to get it done. I love their offense. I really like their defense. So yeah, man. Eagles are my pick. Go all the way, win the Super Bowl. And with that being said, fourth